Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Cristi Habermann. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Cristi Habermann Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is your host, Cristi Habermann, and Kai the Wonder Dog. The last time I recorded, Kai was not doing so well, still having a little bit of trouble getting up and down. She's 14 years old, so we know that the end is in sight. So the 19th has gone and passed. I'm lucky that I work for the federal government, so I got the federal holiday off, which was a nice. That weekend, we saw, Friday night, and I almost feel like it's a gift from Christopher, because Friday night I was browsing Facebook and our local humane society had a half husky, Siberian husky had to have been, half corgi puppy. Now Kai is half corgi and half something else. And we've always had husky dogs. So we went to the Humane Society on Saturday and adopted a dog and adopted this puppy to help us heal. Because we were so focused on trying to manage a new puppy that here it was on Monday the 19th and it wasn't as much of a struggle. And I think there's several things that are contributing to that. It's the 12th anniversary of Christopher's death. And this podcast, I think, really helps, knowing that people are out there listening, and I feel like I'm helping people. I don't get very many messages, even though I would love to hear from you. I'm helping people, which gives me purpose in this healing journey. But I also wanted to talk about, sometimes we confuse healing with forgetting, and that's going to be the topic of our podcast today. Because Bear died, so it was when we were at least 25 years ago. On Facebook, all these memories come flashing back of Christopher with that dog, me with that dog, Colin, my other son, with the dog, and all of these memories came rushing back, and they were pleasant memories, even though his dying just devastated me. It was very unexpected, and I felt very guilty of it. And Bear also died of cancer. And on the 19th, I just had all these memories of Christopher. And it's like I'm getting to the point in the healing process that I can think of him without having my heart break in two. But I'm still sad. Like, I want to emphasize that. I was still sad, but I had all these memories of him. And it was also a really beautiful day here. It's been raining almost nonstop for at least 3 weeks. So it was the one beautiful day that we'd had in a while. And it just makes me think that that wasn't a coincidence either. That Christopher would want me to enjoy the day, and he would want me to enjoy the memories of him instead of being sad. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, is that we think if we don't have that aching pain that comes from the thought of our loved one dying, that we're somehow like forgetting them, or we are not caring about them as much. So we equalize the pain of losing them with the love. And I cannot emphasize enough, that keeps a lot of people stuck. And I realized that that's what kept me stuck also. But I wasn't living my life authentically either. I didn't talk about Christopher. I cared too much about what other people thought. And I also didn't want to share him, to be frank. Like, there's a lot of people I just don't trust. And I equated that with not trusting, not talking about it. So an interesting thing happened. So the 19th, it would have been the 16th. On Friday the 16th, I'm sitting at work. Someone asked me what I was doing for the weekend. And I knew she was wanting me to do something with her. So I just told her the truth. Said I'm not doing anything because this is the weekend that my son died. And then there's that silence. And then I said, well, at least it's not Father's Day this year. Because Father's Day and it's just so much harder because Christopher died on Father's Day and it was the 19th. And so it's really hard and it's like you have 2 grief days. So I always grieve on Father's Day because Christopher died on Father's Day. But then I also grieve on the 19th. And so Sunday, I was wishing people, I'd get messages, happy Father's Day to Roger. And my husband was really sad this year, really, really sad. He says he just struggles with it so much, like we all do. So maybe it's possible that the 19th wasn't so hard because Father's Day was hard. But the 2 days afterwards, I was really grouchy. And I can't help but wonder if I had just suppressed all of my feelings on the 19th, and the next 2 days I was just irritable because I was working through the fact that he's dead. And I don't know how to reassure those of you that are still so new to grieving that the pain will ease and you will never forget them. Now, some people do it on purpose, so don't be confused by that. I saw this interview with this lady once before Christopher died, and I just really wondered about her. She was interviewed by one of the national news organizations about the fact that she lost her child, and she said she just didn't think about it. So, and I just can't even imagine because it's so present in my own life. Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about Christopher and think about how much I love him and how much I miss him and think about memories with him. But what is easing is that pain I have in my heart, that gut wrenching, like someone just punched you and you're just going to lay down and die right now because it's the only way that you can escape how bad it feels. That is easing a bit. And part of me wonders if that isn't due to I don't have enough emotional energy left. So I have this idea, and it's not based in facts. It's just something that came out of my brain based off of my experiences. But when Christopher died, that first initial shock, and for those of you, so you don't have to go back and listen to the episode, I blacked out. I've never blacked out before. I didn't faint. I was still walking around. I was still interacting evidently with my husband, but I blacked out. I have no conscious memory of what happened. I remember crawling across my bed, screaming. I remember crawling up inside the dog bed and feeling like my heart just broke in half. Like I literally felt this ripping. And then I came to and I'm holding the wall. Evidently all of my dogs were howling because I was screaming so hard. My husband's just at a loss, not knowing what to do. And he had PTSD for a long time after that. And then I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried. So I think 6 years in, I couldn't cry anymore. So it's not like my heart didn't hurt. I just had no more tears left. And I am totally convinced that I used up all my tears. In fact, I have dry eye now. And I'm still convinced that my body manifested me having dry eye so I would quit crying. So I don't really cry anymore. I had an episode in February where I cried a lot, but I just don't have a lot of tears left. And it's not because I'm not sad, but I feel like they all got used up. So I had a couple of experiences last week that made me realize that I don't have emotional connections to people anymore. Even if they're people from my past, I just don't have it. I think it's all gone. Like, I think that my emotional energy has just disappeared. And so I'm wondering if that's part of the reason why I don't feel that punch in my gut is because I'm out. I'm out of an emotional energy. I'm just out. And I still feel joy. I still feel happiness. But that connection to other people, that feeling of I'm bonded with you, I'm connected with you, it's gone. I'm connected to my husband and my son and his family. But beyond that, I just don't have it in me. And I was the type of person that I dearly loved my friends. I'm still really connected with my best friend, but she stuck with me through all this trauma and drama. And my friend Becky, but everyone else, I just not connected. So is that healing? I don't know. Or is that just because you're tired? But I do know that as that heartbreaking hurt inside my chest doesn't hurt as much, either that or I'm used to it, I'm not forgetting Chris. I'm not forgetting him at all. And so I just want to caution you to not hold on to the pain as a way as to holding on to your deceased child. Hold on to your memories. Hold on to your feelings. I still feel very connected to Christopher. I see signs of him everywhere. We were outside, trying to think of what day it was. It's outside. We were decorating our back porch because it was finally warm enough to take things off. We have this plastic sheeting that we put up for the winter because I live in the frozen north. And we took it off, and I was talking about Christopher, and a butterfly flew so close to my face. Like I had to jump back because it was so close to my face. And I just knew that it was Christopher on his death day saying hello. So, and I encourage you, especially if you're in the early stages of grief, to work on developing a connection still with your deceased loved ones through the use of signs, through the use of memories, music, whatever it is that makes you still feel connected to them. That's what's going to keep your memories alive. That's what's going to keep you connected to them, even though they've passed away and on the other side. I have a friend that in the early stages of grief, she imagined her son sitting right up there next to God, and that's what gave her comfort, and that's what gets her through. And so it's whatever visual aspect that you have or image that will help you get through it. And there's only one way, and that's to get through it. And we don't have any choice. Like if we could stop time, like right now, today, actually, if I wanted to stop time, I would have stopped it a year before Christopher died. So he would have never gotten cancer. But we can't. There's nothing we can do about that. And so, though that's where I would want time to stop, is clear back then. But it doesn't. Time marches on, whether we want it to or not. Our bodies move us towards healing. So you need to understand that. So when you feel guilty about the fact that I have joy and I have happiness and, oh wait, I'm not supposed to feel those because my child died, you need to understand that your body moves you. Your body moves you towards healing. Now your brain can say, oh no. And then you feel guilty, but the guilt is a wasted emotion. So let me tell you, I feel like my emotions are dulled, and I think it's because of lack of energy, that they've all been used up in this grieving process. So don't waste your time feeling guilty, because your body will do what it will do, and use your mind to enhance what your body is doing and create a connection with them. And your ability to do that is going to be based off of your religious background, what you were brought up to believe religious-wise. You're going to have to explore that to decide if that still works for you, if it still doesn't work for you. I was very spiritual before Christopher died. Not so much after, because I was mad. I was really mad. Because I felt like if I was loved, that my child wouldn't have died. And I don't know if other people go through that, but that's definitely what I went through. Your trauma history is going to contribute to your ability to grieve. And we don't talk about this enough. And I am very clear about it when I talk about it on my podcast, that my son died, and it's like a Band-Aid was ripped off of all the traumas that I've had in my whole life. And they just resurfaced. So not only that, I'm coping with the death of my child, but I'm also coping with the traumas that had happened in my past. And they were connected to Christopher dying. Like, because I was so confused by the grief that I couldn't separate them out. And so you need to understand your own trauma history. So working on your trauma, whatever it may be. And I just had this conversation with someone last week, which is no one escapes this life without having something that they struggle with. No one. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care how religious they are. No one escapes. Whether you have an intact family, a divorced family, no one escapes without having issues with something. And so there's nothing to be ashamed about that. And there's no one to blame about that. It's just we're imperfect people raising children. Our children are imperfect. I haven't even started to address that with my own self with Christopher. I've kind of put him on a pedestal and said, you know, he was this perfect person, and he's not. And I have a feeling that's going to be something I'm going to have to address in my near future, even though I really don't want to. But I got to. But I think I'm finally getting to this place where I don't have to hold on to the pain anymore in order to remember Christopher. So if there's nothing else that you get out of this podcast, is focusing on the long term. Grief isn't going away. So if your son or daughter just died and you're looking for someone to tell you it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll go away, it won't. You have to learn to live with it. And until you accept that you have to learn to live with it, you will struggle. Once you learn, well, actually, it's not learn, it's accept. Once you accept that you have to learn with it, you'll find ways to integrate your grief into your life. And that is the critical piece of grieving. When I did my podcast last week about complicated grief disorder, one of the things it says in the DSM, which is the Bible of mental health disorders, it says that grief that goes beyond the societal norms. So we have norms, and we are creating them in anyway, in the grief community for grieving mothers. It may not be in my lifetime that will normalize the grief of a grieving mother, but I sure know that there are people that are making great attempts. If you look on Instagram, you look at business products, you look at other podcasts, other people speaking out about their grief, you will start to realize that we are changing the societal norms. So my hope is that complicated grief disorder will eventually go away because the norms will have changed. We don't have to change. The norms have to change. And by doing that, we need to talk about our grief. We need to talk about the life changes that it's done, the physical changes. I did a podcast about that probably in my first year, about the physical symptoms of grief. So I've noticed those have evolved. So maybe I will start and do another episode about that. But there's some real physical symptoms that go with grieving. So you need to accept what they are for you. So don't misunderstand my words. I'm not saying that you will experience all of the things that I experience. But it's important to understand what occurred after the grief or the death and what occurred before. And I think one of the pretty much accepted ones is grief brain. And you've seen me have it here on the podcast. I have a hard time remembering. I swear my cognitive abilities have gone down since my son died, but maybe it's just old age. I don't know. But there's some real physical changes that I have noticed. And so the important thing about all of this is grief is an internal journey. It's going inside of yourself and looking at the impact that this loss has made in your family and in you, but most importantly in you. And then you take out each little piece and you look at it and say, is this a piece I want to keep, or is this a piece I can do away with? And you look at how it changed you. I'm only a guide. My voice is only a guide to helping you find your way on this journey. And I don't work for everyone. There are some people who just cannot deal with any ideas outside of the norm. My stepmother is one of them. She absolutely refuses to believe that you can believe in signs. She absolutely refuses to believe in psychic mediums, and that's fine if that works for her. I was talking to her about it. Her mom had died, and I asked her about it, and she kind of covered her ears, like a little child, mind you, and shook her head and went, no, 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 no. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why would you cut yourself off from something that could be so healing? Why cut yourself off from that opportunity? That's the piece I don't understand. Because if your mind was flexible and you had the ability, why would you not? But not everybody does. She most certainly does not. One of the things she does that I struggle with is that she tries to tell me that my ways are wrong, and I show her courtesy and don't tell her that I don't believe in her ways. But it's fine. She don't need to believe in my way. No one needs to believe in my way. No one needs to believe what I believe, because my beliefs are unique to me. And your beliefs will be unique to you when it comes to grieving. But I just want to assure you that your pain does not equal your love. Memories equal your love. So too often we confuse the two and we get stuck. Don't get stuck in your pain. There was a time when I realized I was stuck. I don't remember the situation, but somebody said something really mean to me. I think it was at work. And I thought to myself, how dare you treat me that way? I'm a grieving mom. Like there was a sense of this entitlement of, I'm a grieving mom, so you can't treat me this way. And I stopped myself and I said, Cristi, being a grieving mom does not excuse you from mean people. Like, you're not going to get treated differently because you're a grieving mom. And you need to give up that idea right now. And yes, I do talk to myself like that. Like, I have frequent conversations. I keep myself in check. And that's when I realized I was kind of stuck. So then I was holding on to this identity that I was a grieving mom and you must treat me differently. And I decided that didn't work for me. And that's when I started to turn things around a little bit. It still took a lot of work and time. I cannot emphasize time. For me, it was, I would say, 10 years, 11 years. It's only in the last couple of years that I feel like I am getting to a place where I don't break down and sob every time I think of Christopher. And it's not an outward sobbing. When I say break down and sob, there are times that I walk through my day when Christopher is very conscious on my mind and I am crying. I can feel it underneath my body. I can feel myself crying. No one else knows, but I feel it. And that's one of the consequences of grief. It's there like a river. And nowadays, it's there less, but it's still there. But I'm finding healthier ways to cope. And one of them is this podcast. So I'm going to leave you with that. Try not to confuse your pain with grief. I would love to have somebody come on the podcast and talk about your grief journey. I would prefer it not be someone that's trying to sell something. I want it to be more authentic than that. Reach out to me on Instagram. I have a Facebook. I'm going to be more active there now that it gets a lot easier for me once June goes by until we hit the holidays, and then it gets rough again. So thank you for listening. Kai, the Wonder Dog, and Cristi are signing off, and you have a good week. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is your host, Cristi Habermann. Check out my socials, Grieving Insomniacs on Instagram, Grieving Insomniacs on Facebook, and also check out my webpage, www.cristihabermann.com. I also have a book available, The Solitary Journey Through the Loss of a Child, which is available on Amazon. Thank you for listening.